And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Stand Up Speakeasy. I'm your host, Sareth Ney. In every episode, I bring a comic from coast to coast. And this episode we're going to do Sareth Fest Daytona Beach #4. And Taka Lenora is one of the comedians. So shout out to Punk Rock Pizza in Daytona and the Tinnog Irish Pub for having us. October 2nd to the 5th, 8 p.m. On some dates. Just check out the information on my link tree below. And Tucker has her information below too. So Tucker, welcome as thanks you for being my guest on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
You're welcome. I'm so excited to interview you again because it's like we've been doing stand up for I think a year or two now, so and
hmm
something like that, all the way in Jacksonville. So I get to see you perform at my homeroom in Daytona now, so it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I haven't been there yet. I'm excited.
hmm It's pretty cool. It's like the home of the NWO is like what I like to call it. Like
Yeah,
I'm a wrestling nerd, so that's pretty rad.
most comics are. I'm from Sarasota, and Randy Savage is from Sarasota, so that's my only overlap.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
What happened to Slim Jim? So,
I don't know. I don't know.
oh, for sure. Awesome. And God rest his soul,
Yeah.
too. Yeah, he passed. But I was looking through your bio to find out some more information about you, and you're a failed and former one-day exotic dancer.
Yes.
So, what
Yes.
happened there?
I just felt like I had graduated from art school, and I really thought that I would enter the workforce with like a valid degree, which is adorable. It was 2009 and the economy was on fire. And so I'd been bartending, I'd been serving in the restaurant business, and I just thought, this is the next logical step. I'm just going to make a bunch of money, pay off my student loans, and I decided I couldn't strip in my hometown. It's kind of like doing comedy.
Yeah.
I want to do it somewhere where people aren't like, I know her. I've known her since she was 7. So I went to Asheville, North Carolina. I moved there with the intention of stripping. And while I was there, I found out they had what is called an entertainer's license, which costs $500. And you have to get it notarized. And basically, strip clubs or exotic dance clubs will front the money for you to pay the city, and then you work it off. And I was like, that sounds like a terrible, terrible idea. I don't want to be stuck in some like pay to play, like I already owe them money kind of thing. So I drove an hour and a half to Greenville, South Carolina, but I didn't do my research. And this was the most populated strip club I've ever seen. There must have been over 100 girls on the floor and 30 guys. And I made $13 and not an hour, like the entire shift. So my plans of making all this money were dashed. And the guy who, kind of the manager or whatever, usually you have to tip out the DJ and you have to tip out the like staff of security. And he saw my $13 and he was like, I think I'll let you go.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh man.
That was my foray into the exotic dancing world. And I humbly tipped my cap to the professionals and limped out of there.
I'm glad you made it out of there. So it's like because you're a much better comedian. So
Thank you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've made more than $13 with comedy.
that's so cool.
Yeah,
And you were also a religious missionary too. So
I was.
what made you get into religious missionary?
Um, it's a little convoluted, but I was raised in a small town and I wanted to get out. Like I knew I wanted to leave. And at the time, based on who my parent was, I it made sense to believe in a very strict religion. And so I decided that I would be a missionary. and travel the world and tell the world about my best friend, Jesus. And so I went to this really mean seminary. Um, and like men and women weren't allowed to speak to each other. You weren't allowed to call your family. You weren't allowed to have a car. It was like incredibly strict. And I did that for 2.5 years. And then I left because I was sick. I needed medical care, and they weren't like real big into medicine, go figure. So I left, and after I got tonsil surgery, I moved to South Africa and was a missionary in South Africa by myself at 21, which was a formative experience because it was 10 years. I went to South Africa. It was 10 years after apartheid, and it was a very dangerous country. And so I kind of came away from my belief system and all the things that had propped up what I believed in. I had to step away from that because it didn't serve me anymore. It didn't resonate with my internal beliefs. Like I just didn't believe anymore. Some things happened while I was in South Africa that kind of tested my faith, and my faith didn't withhold the pressure. And so I came back raring to go, ready to go to art school and date women and see the world and do everything that I'd been restricted from being able to do. And yeah, so I'm a failed missionary because when I went to the management, I was like, I don't know if I believe in God anymore. And they were like, yeah, see, that's kind of a prerequisite. We need you to believe in God to be working on behalf of the church. And I was like, yeah, I can't do that anymore. So they sent me packing.
Oh goodness, it's like there's like a good thing and a bad thing about missionaries. Like you get to travel the world, but then all those restrictions are just it's not as fun anymore.
Well, I also just felt like a salesman. I felt like a carpetbagger. It just seemed so inappropriate to go to a war torn country with my privilege, with my everything that I had as a Westerner, to go over and give advice to people that were struggling with things that I couldn't comprehend at 21. I didn't have the bandwidth to understand the levels of difficulty and pain that people were experiencing. And I just felt like I was there with a red balloon trying to help like bleeding people. Like I felt like I didn't have the skills to help. Um, Turns out just spending 2.5 years reading the Bible doesn't make you a social worker or a nurse.
Mm,
So,
indeed. I've been to like Cambodia like 3 times, and like it's been war torn like in the 70s and stuff, and but like it was bizarre because like it was just like meaning like even though they were poor, they were smiling, they were happy.
yeah.
It was totally mind blowing. Like all we're over here, it's like we have all these resources, and like a lot of us are like miserable. Like CEOs are miserable. It's like make it make sense. It doesn't make sense.
I mean, I hate to quote Louis C.K. because I do it more often than I mean to, but his everything's amazing and no one's happy bit is fantastic because it's true. Like, we have cell phones, we have airplanes, we have cars. Like, a lot of us have cars. It's just, we have a lot of privilege. So, in that privilege, I decided, you know what? I'm going to find me a stage.
Absolutely. That's what you did. So, and I'm glad that you are a comedian now, and take all that stuff and turn it into material.
Yeah.
And you're also a high school teacher. So, what made you like what grade did you teach, and what subject, and so forth?
Well, with my art degree, I was the art teacher, and I taught at a really fancy Montessori private high school where the kids would drive Teslas
Oh,
and say things like, I would never ride in a Honda. Um, So they would roast me on a regular basis and ask if I was dead, like if my shirt washed me out a little bit. I'd be like, "Oh, it's really nice to see you today, Cody. Thank you so much. Do I look dead today?" Um, and teaching high school was interesting because I didn't go to high school. I was homeschooled for high school. My mom was very, very religious. She'd been a former addict and did that swap where their new addiction is religion. And just she was an interesting character because she stole my credit while she was religious as a child, but was extremely strict about so much. So it's just interesting that she had the cognitive dissonance to like rob her child, but also be like, you can't watch The Simpsons because that will pollute your brain. Um, I don't know where I was going with that, but oh, teaching. I didn't go to high school. So when I got the teaching job, it was like, okay, well, just give me the curriculum and I'll, figure it out. And they were like, oh, we don't have a curriculum. You're going to make it up. So I did. And I made it up. And I enjoyed teaching the kids that wanted to learn, but there is something in teaching these days, or maybe always, that obviously it's easy to teach people that want to learn, but when you have spent so long, when you've spent like 25, 30 years trying to get really, really good at something, it can break your heart to like offer that hard fought knowledge and information, to offer it to people that are like, ew, you're cringe. Like, ew, I don't want to do that. That requires effort. I'm not going to do that. And I'm like, yeah, but this trick will let you do this and you can do this and you could do Inktober on Instagram, or you could do a political piece, or like I tried to do like pop culture assignments, but it takes a special breed to be a longtime teacher. And I'm finding out that I'm not a good stripper. I'm not a good missionary. And I do not thrive as a teacher. My most recent teaching stint was as a 2-year-old teacher at another really fancy school where the 2-year-olds did not drive Teslas, but their parents did. So you know how understanding wealthy parents are when kids scratch their knees or have anything happen in their day. I'm being facetious. They're not understanding at all. Um, but yeah, teaching, I like working really hard, but I don't know that I like being a leader.
It's a tough gig for sure, being a leader, and it's like that saying. It's like you can you know take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink or whatever. It's like I felt that when I managed a band. I'm like, this is just trying to get them to you know come along for the ride, and they're like, we don't want to do this. It's like, you're a band, get it together.
I know. No, I literally have an anecdote from the teaching. Like the kids were supposed to have portfolios, the 2-year-olds. The 2-year-olds were supposed to have portfolios of work they had done after
Wow.
a week. And so one of the kids was 2, so he cried all week. So he didn't do any projects. So what do you do at the end of the week when the parents want art from the kid that cried all day? You forge it, right? You just draw the art for them and you're like, here's what he did.
It's rough. No matter what the age, it's like, you struggling with like the art kids and like the that are high schoolers and like the 2 year olds. It's like it's a tough game out there
Yeah, it's the job market, man.
for sure. Awesome. We got two audience members in the audience, and so if
Hey,
you'd like to
hello.
interact in the chat, just be nice to us. That's all we ask for. You never know. You never
Or
know.
not. You can roast us too. That's fine.
Sure, why not? Go for it. And then you're also a full time mom and a comedian. So what's motherhood like, and why jump into comedy?
Motherhood is awesome. I happen to have a 8-year-old right now, and I swear it's the best age. It's not the most hilarious thing, but it's the best age because they still don't roll their eyes, and they're like, at least girls are so sweet. And if you say, you can sleep in my bed tonight, they're like, oh, that's so exciting. That's awesome. Whereas like 9, 10, 11, they start getting the attitude, they start maturing a little bit, and they start distancing themselves from their parents. So right now is a really sweet age. And she watches me practice comedy. She sees me leave for comedy. I have featured her in some of my comedy, which she wasn't a big fan of because it was a story about her stealing. And I thought it was hilarious, but she didn't think it was that funny. So I try not to use her too much in my comedy. But the reason I got into comedy is because for years, when Pandora was still the main platform, I would stream comedy. Like I would put on Louis C.K. or Dan Soder or Mitch Hedberg or just somebody that I liked. And then it would aggregate all these other comedians, and I would learn about all these other comedians, or I would just hear the bits and not know who they were, but be familiar with their work. And I did that for years and years. And, guys or people would ask, oh, what kind of music are you into? And I'm like, I'm really into comedy. Like I listen to comedy all the time. Um, Podcasts about comedy, that kind of thing. And finally, when I moved to Jacksonville, I moved in 2019. I was actually born here, but my mom was insane and my dad was in the Navy and he wasn't very smart. So the two of them went to Philadelphia after I was born, and then they separated. And so I came back to Jacksonville, knew no one, and thought, what have I got to lose? I just turned 40. I really love stand up so much. I have so many stories that are difficult or just rich with material. And I was like, I'm okay with being bad at first. You know what I mean? Like, I'm okay with the process. I'm okay with paying my dues. And it's the cheapest high. I mean, doing comedy is a passion of mine that continues to grow. I thought, maybe I'll try it and then it won't feel good. And so then I'll just kind of fade into obscurity. And I definitely did not blow up. I didn't have immediate success. I'm definitely like earning my stripes as I go. But the more I do it, the more I want to do it. And the more I want to connect with other comedians. I love the comedian community. Not all of them. You know who you are. But I love being a part of the comedy community. And there's some characters out there, man. I have met some interesting people through comedy. So anybody out there that's like, I don't know if I should like try it out, I don't know if I'm funny enough, you have nothing to lose. And everybody's so supportive of your first time. If you're not in Jacksonville, find a mic where you are. If there isn't a mic, start it, because they don't know what it's supposed to be like. So just start it. You'll gain your traction as you go. So my path to comedy is, I guess I'm like a preacher. I'm like, you should do comedy because I love it. But I do. I want everybody to have access to the stage, and part of the community is making space for other people. And I'm new enough. I've been doing it 2 years that I have a lot of compassion for new comics. I'm not quite to that point where I'm like, oh, here comes a new batch and I don't know if they'll hang out or I don't know if they'll last. I'm still like, oh, it's good to see you again. Or, hosting has changed that too, because I'm a lot more engaged with people. I'm a little shy. So if I'm not hosting, I'm kind of to myself a little bit. But if I'm hosting, then I feel responsible to make everybody feel comfortable and welcome.
For sure. Absolutely. That's why I love comedy too. It's just so it's just so fun.
Hmm.
It really is. It's cheap, like you said, but the money is not there either. So it's like, oh well, it
We
is what it is.
ask money.
Yep. And if you're in for the money, then you're in the wrong business. So,
Yeah.
yep, indeed. Awesome. So you were all over the place. Like you grew up in Parrish, Florida, and we were talking about where like we didn't know where Altoona was before we went live. And so, where is Parrish, Florida?
Parrish is a tiny, or was a tiny hick town that was beautiful but very isolated south of Tampa, north of Sarasota. So it's right near the 275 exit on 75, and it had a population of approximately 3,000 people. And I lived on a ranch of like 200 acres, so my closest neighbor was like half a mile away, and she was my best friend, but that's some distance. So um, it's just interesting to live in really, really remote, where you're just like staring at the sky, like, what are apartments like? Like all these people live in one building and you can just knock on their door. And I don't know, there was something about living in the country that made me crave the city and crave being in the middle of stuff and finding community and finding comedy.
For sure. When you said like, everyone living in one apartment, remind me of like that town in like out in Alaska. I think it's like or city in Alaska. It's just like everyone lives in that one apartment building. It's like
Yeah. Yeah.
this is nuts. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
No, that would be tough if there was only one apartment for the entire city, because you can't have 30 people and like all 30, or at least
yeah,
I can't.
me neither. I can't either.
We're being candid. There's just no way all 30 people are going to be like, yeah, this is awesome. But I guess if you're in Alaska, your pickings are slim. And so you got to take take the people you get what you
Yep,
get. Don't throw a fit.
pretty much. It's either them or the moose or the mosquitoes. It's like you've got to
Right.
pick one of them.
Yeah.
So, awesome. And so we talked about South Africa, and you also lived in San Francisco too. So what was it like in San Francisco?
San Francisco is a wonderful place to visit. I highly recommend visiting. My subtext to that is living there is not something I would recommend unless you are so wealthy, unless you went to the school that I taught at. Because there's so much going on. It is such a vibrant city, also a little bit violent. The homeless population is bonkers because Reagan let the ins the mental institutions open and let everybody out. So the homeless population is in a crisis state in San Francisco. And I lived in very low income parts of San Francisco. I lived in the Tenderloin, and I lived in the Chinese district in a building that didn't speak English. And we had shared toilets where you had to take your toilet paper to the bathroom because there wasn't toilet paper in the bathroom, and shared showers and a kitchen that had burners, and you would knock on each other's door to let them know that the water was boiling. But San Francisco was a place where I really hoped to connect with the queer community and also the art community. And so I wasn't focused on connecting with the comedy community, which is a shame because what an opportunity that would have been. But I learned a lot, and I had a lot of really unfortunate things happen while I was there, which is fantastic for comedy. The very first night that I arrived, I spent the night in an SRO, which is a single room occupancy, um, which are just like the shittiest places you can go. Like it's just not good. It's a door. Somebody slid heroin under the door. Like it was a really sketchy place. And it was just a landing place so that then my partner and I at the time, who was trans, could find an apartment. And I woke up the very first night at 4 in the morning with a terrible feeling. And it wasn't because heroin had been slid under the door or because I was in a like dangerous SRO, but I went outside and I checked for my car, and my car was gone. And so I thought it had been towed because the city is really into towing. There's just constant, you can park here, but then it's a towaway zone, but you can park here, but then later between these hours, it's a towaway zone for garbage pickup or whatever. So from 4 to 9, I called the city saying, "Hey, I think you have towed my car." At 9 a.m., the lady said very gently, "Sweetheart, I don't think your car was towed. I think your car was stolen." And I was like, "Okay, you don't have my car. My car is gone." And it had everything I'd moved with, like childhood photos, my shoes, my clothes, the things that I needed. The car was stolen. It was gutted, except for half of the shoes were left. And I don't mean half of the pairs, I mean all of the right shoes were taken.
Wow.
And then what they do in San Francisco is you'll see people sitting on the sidewalk with like a towel with things on the towel for sale. And my stuff was like for sale.
Wow.
I saw some of my stuff for sale. So I got my car back, but it was empty. And that was exciting. Couple weeks later, I found out that my partner had tried to cheat on me unsuccessfully, which is always funny when they try and the girl's like, "No, I'm scared of her." And you're like, you couldn't even, you tried and you got shot. Ugh. Anyway, so San Francisco was a series of unfortunate events, but it's a beautiful city and I'd love to go back. And man, they have beautiful theaters. Would love to be back.
Mm, for sure. I've only been there once, and it was just like, going to San Jose to San Francisco and
Right.
crossing that bridge and the Golden Gate Bridge. It's pretty awesome. But I think it was like around the 80s or 90s. So it's been a while since I've been back. But
That's
looking back, I used to live in Los Angeles, so I totally get you with the whole parking thing. I'm like, this is so confusing. Get me
and
out of
it's
here.
like $5 an hour.
Yeah,
It's
it's
nuts.
nuts.
It's so expensive. You have to get a parking garage. You have to store your car. You can't like park it. You have to store it, at least in San Francisco. And then one of the times the parking garage got broken into and they stole all the keys. So the guy
Wow.
had to replace my key. I just like I couldn't catch a break in San Francisco. Um but all of that led to me coming back to Florida and having the resources and the time. I don't think I'd have time for comedy in San Francisco because it is so competitive financially. I wouldn't have the extra energy to devote to writing and performing and open mics and all of that that I'm able to do in Jacksonville if I, as a low income person, was stuck in a city where I was constantly trying to survive. So, to that credit, Jacksonville is a more affordable city and one with a very vibrant comedy community. Um, we have mics every single night of the week and some on the weekend. It's really like a rich place to spread your wings and practice because we have such a high caliber of comics um, to learn from, to watch, to interact with and ask questions. And so it's not just newbies that are like, "Oh, I want to do this." It's like a fully matured community with different levels of people, and you can kind of plug in where your comedy fits in and who who kind of gets your comedy and who can give you advice or who can buy in a little bit and really workshop with you, which is so important.
big time. That's why I love going up there. It's an hour from me, but it's just, like you said, it's just a beautiful city for comedy. So
Hmm.
yeah, for the most part, yeah,
For
except
the most
for
part.
so yeah, and so your humor is sardonic and winsome, and so um, how do you find your voice in comedy, like in your sense of humor?
Yeah, I'm really inspired by people like Beth Stelling and Jordan Jensen. I think they have great, authentic voices, and that's something that I strive to achieve. Authenticity is so important, which is why I think I am, not to jump on the bandwagon, but why I think I'm a little bit autistic, because if something, I'm very black and white, and if I believe something to be true, I'm kind of like a bulldog. Like I can't let go of it. Um, I forgot the question though.
Oh, you're like your humor is sardonic and winsome. Yep.
So as an authentic person, I love telling stories of misfortune in a funny way that makes people laugh. Like I have a joke about living in San Francisco, and I'd been dating women for 10 years. And the very first guy that I dated was my neighbor, and he seemed just like a prince of a guy, which he had to have been to leave women. Like, women are pretty good at what they do. So to leave the community, the queer community, step outside of it, or at least step outside of the paradigm that I was in and date a man, was like a big deal for me. And 2 weeks after we'd been dating, he took me on a long walk and pulled me into the library. And I thought, this is so weird. Why are we going to the library? Like, I thought we were on like a sunset walk. And he was sweating and he was really stressed out. And I was like, what is going on? Like, what is wrong? And he sat me down and he had me read a letter. So, one, he didn't say it. And two, he took me to the library so I would be quiet. But in the letter, he revealed that he had knowingly given me a non refundable STD.
Oh,
So I talk about that in the fact that, like, can you imagine this guy being so scared of a girl's reaction that he's like, where can I take her that will contain her? Like, where can I take her that she'll be calm and not claw my eyes out or something? Which I just think is such a not powerful move on his part. But yeah, it's funny. I have a joke about how I'm sponsored by Forever 21 and Valtrax, and if you take it, please call me, because we can be the same. And then I say, I'm just kidding. I don't actually take Valtrax, even though I infer that I have an STD. So it's sardonic because I have punched down before one time, and it did not resonate with I thought I was punching up because I thought that what I was doing was addressing hypocrisy in leadership. But at the end of the day, a 20-year-old is still a 20-year-old. So um, it didn't resonate with how I want the rest of my comedy to progress. So you learn, roasting is really fun. Roasting is awesome. Um, but I want to be authentic, and punching down isn't something that I want to be known for or lean into in any way.
I feel you on that one. I try to stay away from punching down, and so it's like it's tough to do, but like once you get over it, it's like there's so much more forms of comedy that you can just dive into. And you
For
also your materials like about divorce, taboo, when your menstrual cycle is late at 40 and since inside your bio. So that's uh, I'm glad you touch on those topics because like a lot of people like sometimes don't. They're afraid to touch those taboo subjects.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I live in a Ron DeSantis state, and so being late with my period is an emergency. It's everyone's problem. I cannot afford to have another child. You would see a GoFundMe so fast on my Facebook if I needed to go to another state. And I think last time I looked, it was far. Like it was 5 or 6 or 7 states away to get access to reproductive rights and health. So, yeah, I think it's a very relevant topic because we have some issues with our reproductive rights in Florida. So I do like talking about politics even though it's divisive because I believe it. I believe in the values that I subscribe to. And so therefore it ekes out into my comedy. And if I am late and Ron DeSantis is my governor, I'm going there. Like I'm talking about it because he wears tiny high heel boots and he's worried about me going to Planned Parenthood. Like it's just we've got some things to address. So I think comedy is a really great way to talk about politics because in this country we've gotten so entrenched, and if you can make people laugh, you can make people think. And it's not about converting or changing people's minds. It is about making people laugh at things that are difficult so that they can reapproach the topic and readdress it or think about it in a different way. That's it. That's all I want is for people to think about things in a slightly different perspective. But I am divorced happily. Um, it when I was a child, it was a stigma, and so now it's just so funny to be like, I'm divorced. It's amazing. Let's have a divorce party. And I say that, tongue in cheek because my ex-husband is a fantastic father. I have tons of respect for him. We're very, very like copacetic. Everything's good. But we're much better parents not cohabitating and not together. So divorce is okay.
Yeah, good stuff. And I didn't know like how far Planned Parenthood and those places were from Florida until like I talked to a lady that was we had a Whataburger before like a couple months back. She's like, "Do you know how far we have to drive to handle this?" And I'm like, "Not at all." And she was like, "And even when you get there, they don't even want to help you because you're like not you know
Correct.
you don't have an ID that's in that state." It's
Right.
crazy.
Yeah. I don't know
It's
what I would do. It would be very scary. So, how do you not talk about something that could take away your ability to do comedy or take away your ability to take care of the child you already have or strain that ability? Yeah, I don't want to alienate our two listeners just in case one of them is pro life, but it's a scary, scary time right now.
that's for sure. And man, it's like some of these things that the officials, the powers that be, is just ugh, frustrates me. That's why I'm like, go out there and do something. I don't know what to do anymore. It's like, ugh, it's a tough
I
subject for sure.
I do think laughter is really powerful. There are so many shows that I've been to, that I've watched, that I've been a part of that have a diverse political crowd. And I think if you can get Republicans and Democrats together and laugh together, that can be one of the most unifying, healing things that can possibly happen. And I'm not saying whitewash issues, I'm not saying ignore things that need to be addressed. I'm just saying comedy has a place like what Jon Stewart does with his comedy in terms of translating the news in a way that's accessible and digestible and also funny is incredibly powerful in this country. And so I guess he's somebody that I also look up to, that uses his voice in a very specific way. Um, and while he's authentic, it's not so much about him. It's more about topical stuff. And I don't do a lot of topical stuff. I do a lot more personal stuff, but I think that's probably just age of comedian, just how long I've been doing it.
Heck yeah. I'm horrible at topical stuff too, so I always do the personal stuff. It's just you never know who can relate to it, which is pretty awesome. So
Right. And it's yours. Nobody else can say it when it's
yep.
yours.
And
So
it's like good luck trying to tell our jokes kind of thing. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Awesome. And you featured in Lake City, Palatka, Yulee, and Jacksonville. And what were those experiences like?
Um, Lake City was fun. I did Hall Patters 2 years ago, and that was the first time I had hosted a show. No, that's not true, because I'd hosted in Sarasota before that, but it was the first time I'd hosted a show that I wasn't producing. And it was great. It's a great space. Hall Patters Brewery is fantastic. I have nothing but great things to say about it. I recently did a show at Frog's Pub. Um,
Oh.
Frog's Pub is not somewhere I would invite a lot of people. Um, I had a roach crawl on me. So
Oh.
it is it's I don't think they're going to continue to do comedy there, but anyway, so Lake City was one city. Sarasota is where I kind of came of age, went to college, bartended, spent a lot of time. And so when I go back there, I have a huge community of people that really support me. And so they'll pretty much come out to anything that I try to put on, whether it's an event party or it's an event comedy kind of thing. And so I was able to bring some Jacksonville comics down to Sarasota for 2 shows that we did at Shamrock Pub. And the venue was great because it was tiny and everybody was packed in. It was standing room only. And it was really intimate. And I love that. I hate it when I'm in a cavernous space and there's like 10 people, which I'm not above doing comedy for 5 to 10 people. Like I love a stage is a stage, and I'll take a laugh anywhere I can get it. Um, but it was packed, and um, that feeling is so exciting when you get to perform for your hometown. So that was something I couldn't have done while I lived there, but I was able to bring it back once I moved away. And that was really powerful. So I want to do that again in the future. Um, so reach out if you have a venue in Sarasota that I'm talking to our 2 followers. Reach out if you have a venue in Bradenton or Sarasota or Venice, and we'll discuss getting a show set up.
Awesome. There's some really good comedy clubs there in Sarasota too. So
McCurdy's.
hmm
Yeah.
absolutely good stuff.
Yeah.
And let's see here. So we touched base on Lake City, Palatka, Yulee, Jacksonville, and all that good stuff in Sarasota. And so this next batch of questions are the regular questions I ask everyone.
Okay,
And
cool.
so what inspired you to perform stand-up comedy?
I talked about it a little bit. It was moving to Jacksonville and feeling like all my friends were in another city and I had nobody. And I've said the word, if you're playing a drinking game based on how many times I say the word community, you're sloshed by now because I've already said it like 37 times. But um it's I don't have a family unit that I am attached to. My family is not close to me. And so community has always been that surrogate family for me. And so it's very, very important for me to find it and contribute to it. I'm very much wanting to contribute to the energy that's being exerted and the events that are happening. And so I wanted to throw my hat in the ring, and I got really, really lucky. Like, I met some comedians right away that were really established and really mature in their community or in their comedy, and were able to give tough advice and give encouragement at that first 3-month period where you're like, what am I doing? Am I okay? Should I keep doing this? I don't know. Am I ruining people's lives by getting up? Is it a good thing? I black out when I'm on stage because you're so nervous at first. But I was really fortunate to run into the right people that helped me feel like there was a place for me at the table. So
Indeed, it's pretty Jacksonville. I love that place. Yep,
yeah.
good stuff. Uh, and let's see here. And what was it like? You mentioned your black dad, and what was it feeling like when you first performed stand up?
Um, it was just absolutely. I did black out because I got on stage. I didn't have notes. I didn't need notes. There's a weird thing that happens with notes where you don't need notes at first. You get up and you talk and you're doing your thing. And then you do that for a couple months and then you blank and you're like, oh my God, I can never blank again. I've got to have notes. So then you get stuck on notes for a while. For me, it was like a year and a half. And now that I'm hosting a mic on Wednesdays at the Comedy Zone, I have found that I can get off my notes and I can really just kind of pull from what's happening in the room, or I can pull from like something that triggered a joke that I wanted to tell. But that path has just been fantastic. I remember what I was wearing. I was wearing a very flirty outfit, which was an interesting choice for my very first night getting up on stage. But I didn't know any better. And so my friend was in the crowd. She doesn't live here in Jacksonville, but she was with me, and it was sweet. I'm glad I did it because I wouldn't be here otherwise.
100%. Good
Yeah.
stuff. And you mentioned a bunch of comedians, listening to Pandora and everything like that. And so, what are your favorite uh, specials, comedy records, and comedy podcasts?
Cool. That's a great question instead of just like comedians that I like. So I recently saw Earthquake, produced by Dave Chappelle. Earthquake is a giant, but he's kind of an insider in the sense that he's not as well known as like Dave Chappelle or Chris Rock or whatever, but he is a mentor to Chris Rock, and his special had me howling. I just couldn't get enough of it. I texted a comedian and I was just like, I texted Marcus and I was like, what? Where's this guy been? And he's like, he was just at the Comedy Zone. And I was like, no, I want to go to Orlando to see him because he was so good. It was just so good. Um, other specials that have stuck out to me recently. Well, Dave Chappelle's, I want to look at Netflix right now. Is it Sinners or it's his latest special, and he goes off stage and he comes back and he does like 10 more minutes, and it was the most authentic. I wish I could name the special. I just reached for my phone that I'm casting on to like look it up, but um it touched me. Like, it made me cry. Like, I was very touched by the sincerity of the special, which is not usually a reaction for a comedy special, but when you respect and admire people and then they make themselves vulnerable, it's like an Easter egg. It's for those that like care. And I don't know. That was really special. I listened to Hot Breath Universe, which is a great podcast based out of Atlanta that um, does a lot of like workshopping and questions and invites Mark Normand and different comedians. Like, how do you write your jokes? How do you edit your jokes? How do you um, memorize your stuff? Do you use the Palace method? There's just a lot of like how to in that podcast that can range from beginner to experienced. Um, One thing that I could have taken from them that I didn't listen to in the beginning was be nice and keep your head down.
Yeah. That's a great. That's what I love. That's what I do all the time. It's like no matter the state, it's like I know everyone, but I'm like I'm shy and timid. Like if you talk to me, I'll talk to you. I just won't, I'm you without the hosting thing, you know.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And let's see
No, but
here.
you were friendly to me in the beginning. I remember you introducing yourself because, you know, you've been doing comedy for a long time now. And so you recognize who's been around and who hasn't. And so, unfortunately, sometimes comedians that do have a lot of experience only interact with the known entities. I don't know if it's autism or if it's, I don't know how long you'll be here, so I don't want to invest a lot in you, or if it's just neurodivergent, being shy and talking to who your friends are instead of talking to scary strangers. But you were very welcoming in the beginning, so I appreciate that.
I appreciate you. Yeah, it's 11 years of doing stand up. It's like, I know what it's like to be, first timer, and that's why like on my YouTube's like there's like open micers to headliners that have been interviewed. It's like I don't, discriminate or nothing. It's like it takes a lot of bravery to get on stage. So yeah, awesome. So I was looking up the Dave Chappelle specials, and like the latest one was like in called The Closer, and Sticks and Stones was another one.
And
The
Stone,
Bird Rep, Sticks and Stones,
I think so. Yeah.
and The Age of Spin was like a while back. But like my favorite one was like when he did like the Q&A with everyone. That was
Oh,
like
yeah.
my favorite special because it's like to get inside of his head and like all that stuff was pretty neat.
Well, there's an anecdote about him about when Dane Cook was really big, and you've probably heard this anecdote, but he was at the Comedy Store, and right before Dave Chappelle went on, and this is at the height of his popularity during the Dave Chappelle show. They're like, "Hey, just so you know, it's Dane's night," and Dave Chappelle's like, "What? What does that mean? I don't know what that means." And they're like, "Well, it's Dane's night, so like, just do a tight 10 and like get off the stage." Um, And he's like, okay. And so most comedians just wouldn't do that, right? Like most headliners with that kind of ego would be like, oh, I'm going to pull 40 minutes. I got the microphone. Who's going to stop me? But Dave Chappelle did 10 minutes and then got off stage. But right before he got off stage, he said to the crowd, I'm going to go outside and smoke a cigarette. if, if anyone wants to join me, feel free. The entire crowd left and went outside. So much for Dane's night.
Yep, awesome. Like I love speaking of Chappelle's like shows, like one of my favorite shows of all time. And so, like, what are your favorite sitcoms, sketch shows, and comedy films?
Comedy films. That's interesting because I'm not a big movie person anymore. I grew up watching a lot of movies, a lot of old movies. Like when I was 5, I was watching The Godfather. It just that's just the life, or that's just the entertainment that I was watching at the time. And so now I don't have a lot of comedy movies that come to mind. What was the other part?
Sketch shows and sitcoms.
Sitcoms and sketch shows. Yeah, I I think it's because I'm an artist. I don't like having to dedicate my eyes to something. I love podcasts and I love listening to comedy because I don't have to stop what I'm doing and just devote my eyes to it. I ingest information better when I'm listening than when I'm watching, because my brain starts thinking of something else, or I start playing on my phone. But if I'm just listening, I'm really like attached to what they're saying. So F is for family is funny. I'm a huge Bill Burr fan. I like some Louis. Um, Maria Bamford, I don't think she had a show, but she has so many specials and so many skits that make me think of her when it comes to sitcoms. I don't know why, but um, yeah, yeah, that's a shorter answer.
Awesome. Speaking of Maria Bamford, she's coming to Jacksonville soon, so
I know I
uh,
can afford her tickets, but I hope.
indeed. We'll do a GoFundMe for some Maria Bamford tickets.
I know, right? We'll all wear matching shirts so we don't get lost.
Yep, absolutely. And if you can go on tour with any comedians internationally known and local, which comedians would you have to go on tour with?
Ooh, let's start internationally. I have such a comedy crush on Chris Rock. When he said if bullets cost $5,000, there'd be no such thing as innocent bystanders, that made my brain explode because it was so smart. It was so timely. It was so fucking funny. Um, Chris Rock, just to me, is a savant of those that are still alive. I think that he hasn't burned himself out. He hasn't tried to do too much. He's a stand up comedian and he's pretty much stuck to that. And I think that that's really smart. It makes me crave his comedy more. Whereas if I could go download 300 episodes of his podcast, I might feel a little bit less hungry for like new specials and stuff. So I would love to tour with Chris Rock. That being said, I haven't done a bunch of black rooms yet, so that would be an interesting pairing. Last time I did a black room, I got a lot of wows instead of laughter. Wow. I was like, I don't think that's good. If I could travel with somebody locally, it would be either Marcus Crespo, Emery, or maybe Jack Putnam. Like I think those guys are great and really easy to be around, and it would be a blast to tour or do anything traveling with them. You have to travel with a comedian, you have to be willing to hear their comedy a lot. And I could hear all three of their comedy like all day. So
For sure. Excellent choices.
yeah.
And I feel you on that one. I was like, there's only a few that I'll take with me because, like, my vouchers are pretty good here in the comedy streets. So it's like, I gotta be wise and stuff. So that's why I'm wanting for you to be on like one of the comics on on the fest coming up. And if you can get roasted by five comedians, top five that are alive, which comedians would I get roasted by?
Ooh. God, how do I not say Don Rickles? I feel like such a white person to pick him, but he was a great roaster. Joan Rivers, um, Dave Chappelle or Chris Rock would both be fantastic at roasting. Um, I think it's possible Dave Chappelle would go harder because he would be less worried. And so I would err on that side. I would want somebody to really, really roast me. I haven't done roast me on Reddit, but it's in the pipes. I've got to do it. I have this like thing in my brain. I'm like, I got to do it. I want to do it. So, let's see, Richard Pryor would be amazing just to hear him do comedy again. And of course, George Carlin. So I guess I'm picking some dead and some alive. Let me give you one that like we would know that I would think would be funny if yeah, I'm blanking. I don't know who I would want to roast me, but
I
that's a
think
real
those are pretty.
question.
I think that's a pretty good, solid lineup right there. So,
Okay.
yeah. And where do you see your comedy journey in the next 5 years?
Next 5 years, I would like to travel a little bit more. I would like to see different audiences and try my material in different spaces. 5 years from now, I'll have been doing it for 7 years. And one thing that I would love to come out of my comedy is a book. I would love to write a book. And I think that every time I sit down and write comedy and edit my comedy and perform it and get feedback and fine tune it and sharpen it, it's building a skill that will make it possible to translate some of my stories in a funny way in a memoir type style. So I don't know if that's in the next 5 years, but I definitely hope that I have a more developed voice that's a little bit more focused. And um, I'd love to have a recording of, I'd like to have a 30-minute recording in the next 5 years.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And what's your favorite joke a comic has written?
Hmm. Okay, there's two. I'm sorry. I have to do two. It's Chris Stefano's 9/11 joke, which 9/11 was yesterday. He has a bit at the Comedy Cellar, and it is mwah, like I'll send it to you. It is so funny. If you haven't heard it, he's in a Catholic school and has a mob dad, and it's just amazing. And then Chris Bronger has Wildcattin', which is about him being in New Orleans and a lady just being like a crazy customer and all the things that ensue from there. So Wildcattin' and the 9/11 Krista Stefano special or bit.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
And what experience would you like your audience to take with them after a set is over?
I would like them to feel like somebody has made them forget about what they came in stressed about. We are a very anxious society. And so, what I'd love to do is make them so immersed in the experience and so engaged that they forget and are driving home still chewing on what they heard. That's why I love George Carlin, not because I guffaw or I fall out of my chair, but because I chew on his comedy. Like mentally, I just there's so much to it. You can just like work it in your brain and you're like, "Oh my god, that's so clever." Or, yeah, that's a different angle and his stuff was so packed like Dave Attell. Um so packed with information and content. So, yeah, that would be my answer.
Awesome. And so this is the third act is like so this is stand up speakeasy. It's a secret society of stand up comedians, and so
Okay.
you have to be invited in to join the
Okay.
club. So with that being
Oh,
said, Tucker, which five comedians would you like to see on a future episode of the stand up speakeasy? Jacksonville based.
Jacksonville based. I've mentioned Jack Putnam. I think he would be fantastic. I think Emery would be fantastic. Um, Richard, if you haven't gotten him on, he's a great comedian.
Richard Aragon. Yeah.
Richard Aragon, yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
And let's see. I'm trying to think of a female comedian that's been in the game for a little bit. Um, there's one in Georgia, but she's not Jacksonville based. Her name's Katie.
Oh, I know Katie, but you can nominate her too if you like.
Okay,
Yeah,
Katie, hilarious. I have never seen a new comic just come out of the gate like a racehorse like she did. So talented. Um, and then one more person. I know people. I can think of people. I love it when Mikey B goes up. So if you haven't had Mikey B,
for sure. Excellent picks. And so, well, which shows do you have coming up?
I have a Shroglow show in Georgia. I believe it's Brunswick, Georgia, at Shroglow at 8 p.m. on September 23rd. And then I have the show with you on the 3rd of October. So those are the shows that I have coming up, like off the top of my head. And I'm still trying to work on getting a show down in Sarasota because it's all about being a bringer, and I can bring so many people in Sarasota. I just need the venue. So it's like I could get a venue in Jacksonville and I can get the people in Sarasota. I just need to get it together.
For sure. And my next gig is I'm trying to take it easy, so it'll be at Punk Rock Pizza for the Sareth Fest in Trinidad Irish Pub. So October 2nd to the 5th, you'll see the best comedians from all over Florida, pretty much. Um, Mark your calendars: 8 p.m. shows and 10 p.m. shows. Go to my website aqdpie.com and then click on Sareth Fest Daytona Beach lineup 2024, something like that. Then you'll see everyone on there. And shout out to the venues in Pueblo, Colorado that had the Blowback Gallery for having us this past year. Um, Quan's Kitchen and K Nails and Spa for like helping me out when I was out there in Colorado, and the All Star, the new Star Bar, which gave some of the bands some drinks. So that's about it, pretty much. I gave all my shout outs. So any
Nice.
shout outs from you? Final words you'd like to give out, Tucker?
Thank you to the Comedy Zone for letting us do the mic, and thank you for getting us a bartender eventually.
Awesome, fantastic, awesome. And for everyone else, thanks for tuning in to the Stand Up Speakeasy. We'll see you on the next